12 candles, 1 throne. That's the private joke floating around Kensington Palace this week. And when you hear what the royal household is quietly doing behind the scenes, you'll understand why it's starting to sound less like a joke and more like a blueprint for Britain's next millennium. Stay with me, because in the next few minutes you'll discover the tiny ritual William borrowed from Queen Elizabeth, the single gesture King Charles has already reserved for George's 18th birthday, and one surprisingly normal dad rule that the future monarch has to follow whenever fortnight gets a little too exciting. Prince George turns 12 just as most of his classmates are swapping football stickers and testing the waters of social media. George, meanwhile, is receiving handwritten notes from a grandfather who signs off, "Your loving grandpa, Sr. Charles Rex," and then underlines the R twice so the boy never forgets what it means to be second in line. No pressure, right? Yet the Wales household insists on something radical for a royal heir, a bubble of gentle parenting. No slammed doors, no televised investitures, no palace footmen standing in the breakfast nook. The greatest upheaval in Windsor child-rearing is happening quietly behind a set of Cotswold stone walls, and only a few insiders have seen the playbook. So how does William balance normal dad with future king's coach? It starts at dawn. Most Saturdays, long before photographers gather at the palace gates, father and son walk the grounds of Adelaide Cottage, just the two of them and Lupo 2.0, the family's black spaniel. William quizzes George on whatever headline dominated the previous day's news. The game is called True or Tangled, and the rule is simple: spot the rumor, defend the fact. The objective isn't to cram constitutional trivia into a 12-year-old brain, it's to teach media literacy, because no monarch can govern a narrative he doesn't first understand. Sources say the prince scored 8 out of 10 last weekend. Apparently he nailed the difference between a parliamentary prorogation and a recess. How many grown-ups can claim the same? If that sounds intense, consider the alternative. When Charles was 12, he had already endured 8 public school terms at Gordonstown, complete with midnight bullhorn drills and frigid swims in the North Sea. When William turned 12, paparazzi lenses were camped outside the gates at Eton, documenting every rugby bruise as potential front-page drama. William swore then that any child of his would be allowed to mature far from the telephoto glare. Judging by the protective shield around George, he meant it. The boy hasn't even been issued a personal Instagram handle, yet Kensington's press team still receives weekly requests from global outlets begging for a selfie. And here's where the story pivots from routine parenting to royal choreography. That protective shell hasn't stopped George from absorbing the art of statecraft, it's only repackaged the lessons. Take last year's coronation. Millions watched George, suddenly inches taller, hold his grandfather's train as page of honor. Spectacle, yes, but did you notice the rehearsed signal? At the western door of Westminster Abbey, Charles squeezed his grandson's shoulder exactly twice. Palace aides confirm it was a pre-arranged code: "We're on schedule, you're doing fine." That single, silent gesture may replace curtsies and formal address until George hits his late teens. It's practical, discreet, and very much Charles. A monarch communicating in shorthand, saving full ceremony for the public while mentoring in private. Speaking of mentorship, the king is already mapping a set of one-on-one tutorials, each delivered in the same oak-paneled room where Elizabeth II used to guide William. Remember those weekends when young William walked from Eton to Windsor Castle for tea? The butler who set the cups now confirms Charles' plans to revive the ritual: a log fire, a tray of finger sandwiches, and no smartphones allowed, only a leather-bound folder marked State Papers Light. In it, George will find simplified dispatches about Commonwealth trade agreements, climate statements, maybe even a diplomatic telegram or two. The training principle is clear: teach responsibility in teaspoons before the throne demands gallons. Now, you might wonder whether all this weight risks crushing a preteen's spirit. That's where Catherine's early years research enters the equation. Sources close to the princess say she has installed an invisible pressure valve into daily life. Anytime George feels swamped, he writes one sentence in a private journal Catherine gifted him on his 10th birthday. Nobody reads it, not even Mum. The act is the release. The journal's name: Feathers to Fly. It echoes Catherine's favorite mantra: every skill is a feather, collect enough and the burden becomes wings. She's convinced it works. George reportedly filled 2 full pages the night before the coronation and slept soundly. Grandfather, father, mother, 3 pillars guiding George. But one more bond shapes him: a rotating trio of godparents and mentors handpicked from outside royal circles. Every school holiday, he spends 48 hours shadowing one of them. Last Easter, it was a Coast Guard rescue chief in Cornwall. George learned to read radar blips and sat, unphotographed, inside a Sea King simulator. Imagine the story he told classmates Monday morning. What did you do over break? The goal is perspective. The heir must see service in every uniform, not just scarlet tunics on parade. At this point you might be asking, when will the palace finally break its silence and explain exactly how they intend to prepare the future king? In just a moment I'll share an insider prediction about the schooling decision scheduled for 2026, Eton versus Marlborough, and why one unexpected wildcard might swing the vote. But first, tell me in the comments, if you were William, would you follow tradition and send George to Eton, or carve a new path? Drop Eton or New Way below. Let's see which house is winning in real time. Alright, let's lift the curtain. Despite breathless tabloid drafts of George to Eton confirmed, courtiers hint the Waleses are more conflicted than they let on. Yes, William loved the camaraderie, but Catherine is wary of the goldfish bowl effect that swallowed his teenage years. Enter Glenalmond College, a co-ed Scottish boarding school with strong outdoor ethos and exactly 0 paparazzi lines outside its gates. It sits just 50 minutes from Balmoral, meaning summer retreats could merge seamlessly with term-time drop-ins by Grandpa the King. One advisor claims Glenalmond's headmaster has already hosted William and Catherine for a private dusk tour. If that sparks your imagination, wait until you hear Thursday's scoop about the secret scholarship program the school is ready to launch in George's name, but that, my friends, is a story for our next episode. Before we wrap, a quick reality check. For all the strategic mentoring, George is still a boy who crusades through garden mud with blue trainer laces flapping. William's single hard rule, here's the normal dad part, is that PlayStation battles end at 8 p.m. sharp on school nights, monarch in waiting or not. Rumor says George once negotiated an 8-10 finish by citing time zone differences across the Commonwealth. William laughed, then pulled the plug anyway. Kings, it seems, must learn limits before they learn latitude. So, 12 candles, 1 throne, and 3 generations united by the same invisible shoulder squeeze, you're doing fine. If you've enjoyed this closer look at the making of a future king, give the video a like, subscribe for more untold royal stories, and keep that notification bell on. In our next episode we'll reveal why the Glenalmond rumor spooked half of Eton's alumni board, and how a single forgotten clause in Queen Victoria's journals could settle the debate. You won't want to miss it. See you soon, and long live curiosity.